This is Going Beyond Testing. I'm Mark Alyn, along with the CEO of NJ Labs, Sandra Lee. We're going to talk about residual solvents. Sandra, let's start with what is a solvent?
Solvents are liquid that we use in testing, whether to make a product, dissolve a product, or to drive a reaction. So in the manufacturing world, what most people know are that solvents are used for extractions, especially in the cannabis industry, right? So you want to extract a certain cannabinoid like CBD from a hemp plant. There are different ways to do it, but one of the most common and the most widely used is using ethanol. So ethanol is a solvent and it doesn't taste very good. It doesn't smell very good, it doesn't taste very good, but it's very useful in extraction. We use it in test methods too, to separate out organics and inorganics, separate out, and we can suck it out and then separate it into another flask or something like that. But in manufacturing, they're using it to mostly drive reaction, right? Pharmaceutical drugs use a lot of solvents to drive a reaction. Supplements, even raw materials like vitamins or amino acids, you're using a lot of different types of chemicals to make these products.
Right.
And you're taking these raw materials, putting into finished products, and to make a finished product, that could also take additional solvents, right? So at the very end of that process, you want to make sure that you have very little solvent left because it could be toxic to your body. It could cause cancer with high concentrations of it.
Oh boy.
It could get you very sick, cause heart disease, and things like that. So residual means you just want very little left at the end. And we're testing for any residual solvent because during the manufacturing process, you should be extracting out the solvents at the end too, so your products are safe. And what we do here is we use something called GC, gas chromatography, with headspace. Headspace is a part of the instrument that introduces your sample to the GC, right? And that's usually used for volatile substances like hexane, ethanol, methanol with the hand sanitizers. You've heard like how there's limit of methanol in hand sanitizers.
Right.
And when you absorb a certain concentration of it, it could cause diseases and other illnesses.
At the beginning of COVID, with the lockdown, all of a sudden people were selling 60% alcohol.
Yes.
And several months later, now it's 70%. I think I've even seen an 80%. Using that hand sanitizer, don't try this at home, I am a professional. Using the hand sanitizer, that can actually get into your skin and cause problems?
Yes, if it has impurities like high concentrations of methanol or even trace, over a period of time will continue to build in your body and actually shut down certain functions in your body and make you really sick. And that's what people are finding out is at the beginning of the pandemic, you just wanted hand sanitizer. So there was not enough of it that could go around.
Absolutely.
So people who never manufactured this material or this product will come in and just mix things. They have no idea what they're using. And what was happening is no one was testing for it. And then people started getting sick. And then FDA came and said, hold up, you need to stop. This needs to be tested. You can't use these ingredients. And it's not safe for the public. So residual solvent testing is very critical in terms of a lot of the products.
In terms of, say, a supplement, a CBD or other supplements, that might use a solvent for extraction. First of all, are there other methods that a manufacturer can use not using a solvent?
It really depends. For CBD products, you can use CO2 extraction. That doesn't use solvents. But then you're looking at CO2 levels in your product, right? So there's test methods for those too. It depends. You've got to develop them for your product. We do it here for certain known excipients, but definitely for products that have residual solvents in it, it's really important to test it appropriately. And it's not an easy method. It's not an easy technique, but we have a couple of chemists who are very specialized in it.
And so you're testing to see if product A has any solvents left over and what levels there may be.
Right. So residual solvent testing, we follow USP, United States Pharmacopoeia. Some of these tests can last for days, right? It could be 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, but what happens is because of the way the instrument's set up, one injection could be 90 to 100 minutes long. And then you have to do 30 injections or 50 injections. It could go on forever, right? So how do you know if your instrument is suitable from point A to the very end? And that's what we do, is we make sure the system is suitable. We call that system suitability. We inject the standards that we're looking for. Like if you're looking for methanol, you inject standards of methanol to make sure that we can see it accurately, detect it, and then you do consecutive injections. Once we meet that criteria, the system is suitable, we inject sample. But for headspace work, for residual solvents, you inject sample as is, because it's at high temperature, you transfer it, it gets introduced at high temperatures, and you volatilize it, right? But as soon as you mix two things in a vial, it changes the composition. So you're supposed to do sample by itself. You have to spike your sample with methanol if you're looking for that. Then you inject methanol. Then you inject all these system suitability solutions to make sure that the instrument is appropriate for your test. And then you inject sample.
Wow.
And
so
then you do this bracketing standard, and at the very end to make sure from beginning to end it was good.
Are there levels that are acceptable of solvents in these, or should we have zero?
There are levels of acceptable levels. FDA does some studies. There's different classes, class 1, 2, and 3. Class 1 being the smallest one, and they're carcinogens. They're like benzene is one of them, and they have very low specifications. None of them say not detected. There are some allowable because, again, these exist a lot in a lot of different environments, just like heavy metals just exist everywhere.
Why would a company, a manufacturer, want to test for residual solvents?
What we found out is when we just run a normal method for residual solvents, there's some interferences from the sample or from the standard. It doesn't ever turn out the way you expect to. So companies who should test for residual solvents, especially when they're using solvent in their process, in their manufacturing process, to drive the reaction to the finished product, right? They can trust that, hey, we validated our manufacturing system, there's no residual solvent at the end. But how do you know for sure? How do you really know for sure without testing it at the very end? And we highly encourage like cosmetic companies, cannabis companies, definitely pharmaceutical companies and other supplements, because it may not come from your manufacturing process, but it could come from the raw materials that you purchase from other countries or different companies that's being imported here that may not have the same type of strict regulations. So it could be contributing from other materials that you put into your finished product.
And it could also, I guess, the contamination of the solvent could come along any step of that manufacturing.
Whether
point.
it's at your manufacturer or, again, at any of the, let's say your formula has 10 different ingredients. One of those 10 are your actual API, active pharmaceutical ingredient, or what you're looking for, what you want in your finished product, right? The main ingredient. But the other 9, you can't ignore them. Those are excipients. Those are also manufactured somewhere, and they have probably residual solvents in them. And it can all get compounded and compiled, and it could even become more concentrated as it goes through your process. You don't know until the very end, and then you test it.
And do you we've talked about this before. Should this have repeated testing as well to make sure?
Yeah, so definitely a lot of our clients, even if they buy the same material from the same manufacturer, they still want to test for it to make sure that nothing's changed. That's the only really, if you can't physically go and inspect your supplier, the best way to check to see if their process has changed is to test their materials multiple times.
On our next episode, we're going to talk about the fact that we're all consumers. We haven't done that yet. We've mentioned it several times. And we all are consumers. We'll find out why, because you as a product developer or a manufacturer need to have testing, because your family and yourself are going to be using your own product. I'm Mark Alyn, along with Sandra Lee. This is, we're at the NJ Labs chemistry lab, and this is Going Beyond Testing. Visit us on our website, which is here on our screen. We'll see you in our next episode.